Look, there is a psychological battle happening inside your mind, literally every single day. On one side, you've got motivation. It's fleeting, it's unpredictable, and honestly, it completely relies on you feeling inspired, well-rested, and just ready. On the other side, there is extreme enduring discipline. This is a cold, calculated, relentless framework of action that simply does not care how you feel. In this explainer, we're going to deeply analyze the actual anatomy of mental toughness. We'll be drawing on elite sports psychology, cutting-edge neurobiology, and the visceral, extreme reality of endurance athletes to break down the exact mechanisms high achievers use to bypass their feelings and push through absolutely insurmountable barriers.
Renowned sports psychologist Bill Beswick asks his elite athletes 3 foundational questions. What do you want? How badly do you want it? And how much will you suffer? That is a jarring reality check. High achievement at the elite level isn't about waiting for some magical spark of inspiration. It is entirely about a willingness to suffer. Beswick works with Olympic gold medalists and elite teams, and he makes it incredibly clear: the best pay a massive price. They sacrifice, they endure, and yes, they suffer, daily. Motivation might get you to the starting line, sure, but an uncompromising acceptance of suffering, that is literally the only thing that will carry you to the finish line.
Chapter 1. The Illusion of Motivation.
Okay, let's dive into this by completely deconstructing the myth that elite performers rely on feeling motivated to get things done. Society is so obsessed with motivation, right? But in the realm of high performance, motivation is actually viewed as a fragile liability. It's weak. Look at these 2 distinct mindsets. On one side, training to compete. This is the mindset of athletes who show up, do the requisite amount of work, and just try to be the best within their immediate group. It's adequate, but it relies way too heavily on external circumstances. On the flip side, we have training to dominate. This is a profoundly different psychological state. These individuals train so relentlessly, with such intense ferocity every single day, that winning on race night becomes an absolute inevitability. They don't need to feel like working out. Their baseline action is domination, completely regardless of their internal emotional weather.
To really understand why training to dominate is so difficult, we have to look at a concept called limbic friction. Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman defines this as a literal physical barrier in your brain that flares up when you face an unwanted task. It's that booming neurological voice telling you to just stay in bed, that you're way too tired, that sleep is more important right now. It's not just you having a bad attitude. It is a deeply ingrained evolutionary survival mechanism designed to conserve energy. To beat it, you have to use what's called top-down control. You literally have to scruff yourself, essentially forcing your prefrontal cortex to completely override the primitive, fatigue-driven signals coming from your limbic system.
Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Habit Building.
If the mind is essentially a machine fighting against its own lethargy, we need to figure out how to systematically hack and harden that machine. Discipline isn't magic, folks. It is neurochemistry. And it starts with a simple number, 10 to 30. That is the exact number of minutes of morning sunlight you need in your eyes every single day, ideally right after waking up. This is a biological non-negotiable. Viewing bright light early in the day triggers this crucial, healthy spike in cortisol. It sets your circadian rhythm and primes your entire nervous system for alertness and mental readiness. If you're trying to build discipline, but your biological hardware is completely out of sync because you're hiding indoors all morning, you are fighting a losing battle. You absolutely have to set that chemical foundation first.
And this brilliantly illustrates why sustaining that effort requires tactical, neurohacking protocols. Let's break down Huberman's protocols here. First, avoid layered dopamine. We do this all the time, right? We stack rewards, pre-workout drinks, the perfect playlist, the right gym outfit, just to get through a workout. But over time, your brain actually requires all of those external things just to function at baseline. Huberman suggests occasionally stripping it all away. Train in pure silence, zero stimulants. It forces you to generate that energy internally. Second, utilize intermittent random reinforcement. Keep your brain guessing. And third, thread dopamine backward. This means training your brain to attach the feeling of reward not to the finish line, but to the actual gritty friction of the effort itself.
Now this brings us to a really crucial computational mechanism in the brain: dopamine reward prediction error. See, the dopamine system is always trying to predict wins. If you constantly reward a hard focus session with a cup of coffee, the dopamine release eventually just flattens out. The tactic here is to deliberately, randomly skip that reward. You finish a grueling 90-minute focus block, and instead of taking a break or grabbing that coffee, you delete the expected reward entirely. Now, I know it sounds almost masochistic, but neurologically, it keeps your brain locked in pursuit mode. It keeps you incredibly hungry for the grind, preventing you from getting addicted to the external reward and binding your intense focus entirely to the effort itself.
Chapter 3: The Mindset of Endurance.
So, we've looked at the psychology and the neurochemistry. Now let's see how these mechanisms manifest in the raw, visceral reality of extreme physical pain. Consider this stark quote from a channel swimmer featured on BBC Reel. Your body starts to eat itself because it starts to run out of fuel. You start to be like, why am I in this water? That perfectly captures the exact moment known as the dark night of the soul. It is that terrifying moment when all motivation just vanishes. The adrenaline is completely gone. The cheering crowds, they don't matter anymore. You're freezing, you're in agony, and your body is literally shutting down. At this exact point, layered dopamine and fleeting inspiration absolutely cannot save you. The only thing that survives in that freezing water is deeply ingrained, mechanized discipline and relentless top-down cognitive control.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is Dr. Scott Geller's fascinating psychological distinction between two types of performers under pressure. We have success seekers and failure avoiders. Failure avoiders operate entirely out of fear. They're just trying not to lose, to not get a bad grade, to not fail the mission. They feel controlled, they feel stressed. Success seekers, on the other hand, operate out of pure, unadulterated drive. They perceive autonomy. They actually lean into the friction because they are actively pursuing a win rather than just frantically running from a loss. Your internal framing literally dictates your endurance.
To actually move from being a failure avoider to a success seeker, Geller outlines these 3 clinical steps for true empowerment. You have to ask yourself, 1, can you do it? Do you actually have the self-efficacy and belief in your own capability? 2, will it work? Do you trust the process or the brutal training you're putting yourself through? And 3, is it worth it? Do you deeply, genuinely value the consequences? If you can look in the mirror and answer yes to all 3, your brain shifts. It moves out of a state of forced compliance, which constantly drains your energy, and into a state of true empowerment. And that is what fuels long-term self-motivation and the sheer ability to endure suffering.
Chapter 4: Forging Unbreakable Toughness.
So the crucial point is, in this final chapter, we have to focus on the philosophical and actionable mindset shifts required to actually weaponize all these scientific insights in your daily life. We must starkly contrast the victim mentality with the fighter mentality. The victim waits around for motivation. They retreat immediately back to the comfort zone the second things get hard, and they constantly find excuses. The fighter uses top-down control to step aggressively into the challenge zone. Bill Beswick, that legendary sports psychologist we talked about earlier, shared a highly personal battle. When he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, he admitted he initially slipped right into a victim mentality. But within days, his family intervened, forcing a hard transition back into a fighter mentality. They didn't deny the terrible, frightening reality of the disease. They simply made the choice to fight it.
There's 1,000 excuses, but not a single reason. When you step into the challenge zone, whether that's an icy ocean channel, a massively complex project, or even a debilitating disease, your limbic system is going to invent countless excuses to make you quit. I'm too tired. It's too cold. It's just not fair. The uncompromising truth of the elite performer is acknowledging those excuses, staring them dead in the face, and realizing that absolutely none of them constitute a valid reason to surrender. The excuses, they will always be there. You just have to override them anyway.
Let's strip away all the neuroscience, all the dopamine protocols, and all the elite sports psychology for just a second, because it ultimately boils down to one simple question. Tomorrow, when you wake up, when that alarm goes off and the limbic friction in your head is absolutely deafening, you are faced with the ultimate daily choice of top-down control. Am I going to be a fighter today? Will I enforce my will upon my circumstances?
Or am I going to be a victim? Am I going to let my fatigue, my utter lack of motivation, and my carefully crafted excuses dictate my reality? Look, the science shows us exactly how the brain works, but the choice to actually flip that switch, that belongs entirely to you. You are writing your own life story every single day. So which character are you choosing to be?